How's everyone? When did the course start? Yesterday? Today? When? Right now. Okay. For how many people is this their first time with us? Wonderful. And how many people have been to something here in the past? Okay. Anyone doing this course for the second time? Why? Okay. So before I start whatever I'm going to say, just anyone spontaneously tell me why you're here. What do you want from this course? Anyone? Say that again. A new life. Sobriety. Are you struggling with addiction? Good. So this is a good place to be.
Be the best dad I can be.
To be the best dad. To be the best everything you can be. Yes. To make sure I'm to go in the direction of that anyway, right? Okay. Anyone else? Just to be present. Okay, so in a way, all of those things is what we're going to address this week, both intellectually but also experientially. It's not enough to have an intellectual understanding. Knowledge without experience is kind of sometimes confusing. If you have a lot of things you know about but you haven't experienced them, then that gets confusing. And also the other way around. If you have experience but you can't understand what the experience is, then sometimes you think you're going crazy because everybody else is who we think is normal is actually crazy. So it's to realize that we're not crazy. Maybe everybody else is, but that's judgmental, so I won't say it again. Okay. So let's start today with the most fundamental question of our existence. Does anyone know what that is? What's the most fundamental question of our existence? Wow. Okay, so who am I is the most fundamental question of our existence. And from there are other questions that follow. What do I want is another important question. We go about trying to get things, and after we've obtained our goals, sometimes we realize that's not really what I want. What do I truly want is a very important question. A third question, which is also very important, is what is my purpose? What am I doing here? Doing here meaning not the Chopra Center, but doing with my life. What is the purpose of my life? And then another question, which to me is very important and for many reasons, is what am I grateful for? Because gratitude is a question. When we ask that question, it opens the door to our spirit, to our soul. So as part of our meditation, when you get more instructions, I believe everyone learned the primordial sound. Did everyone learn the primordial sound? Yes, the mantra? Okay. So now we're going to add things to that. So these 4 questions will play a big role. So let's only talk about the first question this morning. Who am I? Okay, so as you rightfully said, that's the most important question of our existence. And it's also I is the most frequently used word in any language. I had lunch, I said I went to this movie, I'm in love, I'm scared, I want this, I don't want this, I'm in a good relationship. Actually, if you think about it, I is the most frequently used word in any language. And yet it's a great paradox that most people actually don't know who I is. So if I asked you something like, where are you right now? Where are you right now? Anyone? Okay. What do you mean by here? Where is here? Okay. If I had my back turned to you, and I said, what's your name? Tanya, where are you? I had my back turned to you, and you might say, I'm here, right? I'm here. Well, even if she doesn't, will you all say, I'm here? Raise your hands. I'm here. So that's our normal experience. I is somewhere here, and everything else is somewhere there. That's our normal experience of I. Because I, somewhere here, this body-mind, went to a movie. I, meaning this body-mind, went for Chinese food. And when we use that word I, we usually mean this particular body-mind. Is that fair enough? That's how we usually think anyway. You guys may be more sophisticated and may think that this is a socially induced hallucination, and we'll get to that. But usually when we say I went for Chinese food, or I went to these movies, or I am in love, or I dislike the current political atmosphere, then we usually mean this person. Okay, so this person, which has a name, Deepak Chopra, Tanya, what's her last name? Knox. So it has a name, the person has a name, and the person has a form, this form. This form, but this form not only includes the physical form, this includes what we call the mind. Because, we're not just a statue, we are a biological organism that moves, that speaks, that communicates with others, that has memories, that has desires, that has imagination, that has thoughts. So we cannot just refer to the person as a body. We have to refer, if we are going to refer to the person, we have to refer to the person as both the body and the mind. Our biological organism is a body-mind. But what we want to get clear this morning is that we are not our biological organism. The I is not a biological organism. The I is the awareness, the consciousness. And now I'll use the word spirit because you're here for a course called The Seduction of Spirit, so we might as well define what that is. Okay, the I is the consciousness or the awareness or the spirit, and we can also use the word soul if you want to. Some people, not you, but in academia and scientific circles, they get very nervous when we use words like soul and spirit. But they're okay if we use words like awareness and consciousness. It's funny how words come and go. They're the fashion of the day. But over here, we are going to use the words awareness, consciousness, spirit, and soul almost synonymously. We'll see the differences during this week. We'll see the minor differences between soul and spirit. But for now, let's use the word awareness. And let's use the word consciousness as synonymous. Okay? So when we speak today of who am I, we refer to the I in which all experience is happening. Okay, so right now you're having an experience. What's the experience? You're here in this room, you're looking around, you see other persons, you're listening to this lecture, and at the same time you're thinking, you're analyzing what I'm saying. Maybe you're liking it, maybe you're not liking it, or maybe your mind is distracted, you're thinking of your husband or your wife or your children or your home or your job. So lots of things are happening right now. And all those things that are happening in your life, we can call them experiences. And so I is that in which all experience occurs. Is that fair? I is that in which all experience occurs. And what is the experience? Experience is the experience of our body. We are experiencing our body. You're experiencing your body, right? You can look at it, you can touch it, taste it, smell it, feel it. So your body is an experience. And that experience of the body that you're having right now is not the experience of the body that you had when you were a baby. Is not the experience that you had of a body when you were a teenager, or even the experience of the body you had a year ago. Just take a selfie and then compare it with a selfie from 1 year ago. It looks a little different. Okay, so your body is a process. It's not a thing. What do we mean by a process? It's a process means it's an activity. It's a verb, it's not a noun. This microphone is a noun, it's a thing. But your body is not a thing. It's an activity, it's a process. And that process is ceaseless. It doesn't stop even for a second. Doesn't stop even for 1 second. So if I look at you right now, and then I look away, and then I look again at you, your body has shifted a little bit. If I look at you right now, look away, and look at you 10 seconds later, your body is now 10 seconds older. Okay? And if you ask scientists what's the difference between past, present, and future, at a very fundamental level, if you ask people who know something about this, what's the time difference between past, present, and future? At the nanoscale, it's not even a nanosecond. Okay, so the past is over as soon as you experience it. Right? When I came into this room, that is over. 5 seconds ago is over. 1 second ago is over. 1 nanosecond ago is over. By the time I get to the last part of my sentence, the first part of my sentence is over. So, one of my favorite philosophers of all time, Western philosophers, is somebody who is known as Ludwig Wittgenstein. He said, our life is a dream. We are asleep. But once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. Okay, so in one way, who do we wake up to? We wake up to the I in which that dream is occurring. we wake up to the I in which that process, which we call the body and the mind and the world, is occurring. Once again, your body is a process. When I look at you, in that moment of perception, just in that moment of perception, I take a photo of an activity that is ceaseless. It's been happening, that activity is happening since the day you were conceived. And it hasn't stopped even for a second. So, the I is not your selfie. It is yourself, in which this body-mind is a selfie. Because this body-mind is a process, it's an activity. And it's a ceaseless activity that cannot be frozen for even a microsecond. People try to freeze it. They'd get Botox and, silicone in their body and all those things, which have a longer shelf life. But in any case, the activity that we call the body cannot be stopped. Similarly, the activity that we call the mind cannot be stopped. Because what is the mind? It's a word we use to describe the experience of thoughts. It's a word we use to describe the experience of emotions. It's a word we use to describe our, if we are sophisticated enough to think about it, to describe our ego identity. That's all in the mind, right? Our ego identity, our thoughts, our emotions or our feelings, or our imagination, or our desires, or our memories, that's all put together, we call it the mind. Okay. But we know from our own experience that our mind is a ceaseless activity. Right? You don't have the same thoughts right now that you had 5 minutes ago. You don't have the same thoughts that you had this morning. You don't have the same emotions that you had when you had an argument with your husband or wife, or when you made up and said, I love you. Right? So our emotions and our thoughts, or that which we call our mind, our memories, because you're recycling memories all the time. Do you remember the school when you went to when you were less than 12 years of age? You do? You can see it now in your mind's eye. You can see the classroom. You can see maybe a couple of teachers, your classmates, your parents. Where was that memory before I asked her the question? Okay, that memory was not in her brain because there's no glucose being used right now to preserve that memory. That memory was in her consciousness, awareness, spirit, whatever we want to call it. Until she recalled it, she wasn't even aware of it. Or now I ask you, do you remember what you had for dinner last night? What did you have? Cauliflower curry. So you think if I went inside her brain, there's some network that says cauliflower curry? There was no memory till I asked her to remember it. Okay, and as soon as I asked her, then she remembered. And there was no effort. I mean, I asked her and she saw the cauliflower curry in her mind's eye, and she saw her classroom in her mind's eye. And yet if I asked you, so what did you do 3 weeks ago on Wednesday afternoon at 2:30 p.m., you probably can't remember. Unless it was something very important. And, you were emotionally connected to it. So it's a very strange thing, this thing that we call memory. People can remember other lifetimes, but they can't remember last Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Memory. We can talk about this thing, memory, but memory is a mental activity, and it's always shifting. So is desire. Desire is a mental activity which is always shifting. And we know as we grow in life, as we evolve in life, then our desires change. First it's all about ourselves, and it's about, pleasure, and it's about achievement, it's about ambition, it's about money, and we'll go through this whole hierarchy of desires. As we fulfill desires, then we want to expand our desires. We can't get rid of desires, by the way, because if you try to avoid a desire, anything you resist will persist. So the only way to get rid of a desire is to fulfill it, or get to the place where the desire is now fulfilled or expanded to something bigger. But it can't expand to something bigger if you haven't filled the smaller level. But the point here is, your mind is an activity, a process. Just like your body is an activity, a process. How about the world? So today you are here at the Chopra Center in this room, and then before this lecture maybe you were outside, and yesterday maybe you were on a plane, and before that maybe you were at home and you were at work. There's nothing that we can call the world that is also not a ceaseless activity, because our experience of the world doesn't change, doesn't stop even for a second. So far, is everybody with me? Our body is a process, our mind is a process, and the world that we experience in every moment of time is a process. By process, I mean activity that cannot be stopped even for a second, or a microsecond, or a nanosecond. You cannot stop an activity. So this is why the question, who am I, is most important. Because as long as you think you are your situation, your circumstances, your current relationship, your current job, the amount of money you have in the bank, or your current thought process, or your current body that you would like to freeze if it's good looking, or you think it's good looking, you want to freeze for eternity, then as long as you are confusing yourself with, for lack of a better word, your selfies, then you will be in trouble. Why will you be in trouble? Is you cannot stop the process. You cannot grasp at something that is ungraspable. Okay, so this brings us to what the wisdom traditions tell us are the causes for human suffering. Okay, so animals suffer. Everything that has life suffers if you inflict pain to it. But human beings suffer for other reasons. At some point or another, human beings have what we call an existential crisis. They have an existential crisis if suddenly somebody in the family is diagnosed to have cancer or terminal illness, or somebody dies, or you yourself get sick, or you lose every semblance of security, you lose your job, you're suddenly in the midst of a crisis, maybe a natural catastrophe. Something happens and you are filled with fear. And so that's when you have your existential crisis. At some point or another, everyone has that. Because even if you have the best life in the world, you have the best relationships, you have all the money in the world, you have everything that you wanted, you're still going to get old, And at some point, you're going to have some degree of infirmity, no matter how healthy you are. And at some point, you're going to die. So when you get closer to that, even if your life has been perfect, there will be an existential crisis. So the wisdom traditions tell us, and that's where this whole course is about actually finding out who am I, so we don't have to go through that existential crisis, while at the same time we are enjoying our lives, we are finding the best relationships, we are succeeding at all the goals that we have, and we have the ability to love and enjoy the experience of love, and we have the ability to go with the flow and experience what we call lightness of being, a loving heart, a joyful body, a reflective mind. Then, if we are also understanding who am I, in addition to that, I think we could actually find what the great wisdom traditions say: freedom from suffering. Freedom from existential suffering. As I said, animals do experience suffering when they're subjected to pain, but they don't ruminate about the past, future. They probably don't have regrets. If I kick a dog, the dog might get upset in the moment, and I see the dog 5 years later, it might attack me. But unlike a human being, it won't plan how to get even. We have something that is called imagination, in which we ruminate. We become victims of memory and also of what could go wrong in the future. The fact is, all experience is happening now. Okay? All experience is happening now. The experience of your body is happening now. The experience of your mind is happening now. The experience of memories in the past is happening now. The experience of the future in imagination is happening now. And now never ends. Now is eternal. But we do not know that the I that we refer to is in that eternal now. So here's the first principle to grasp. All experience is in time. All experience occurs in, even though physicists now a lot of physicists who think about this and scientists who think about this, they'll say time is an illusion, and it actually is, but the fact is our experience of life is in time. You are no longer that teenager or that baby or the person you were 5 years ago. And your mind is not the same, your emotions are not the same, your personality hopefully is changing and evolving, your desires are changing, everything is an activity. So experience is in time, no question about it. What we call experience, mental or physical experience, is in time. But the I in which that experience is happening is not in time. This is very important for us to grasp. I is not in time. So if it is not in time, where is it? If it's not in time, then where is it? And the only answer can be, we use words for this, it's timeless, it's eternal. Now, eternal doesn't mean stretching endlessly for eternity, like, if there's a heaven which is eternal, it would be Sunday school for eternity, which would be boring. Okay? Not in time means not in time, not stretching in time. It's timeless. And being timeless, it doesn't occupy space, because anything that occupies space, this is occupying space, is in time. Somebody made it, and maybe a few thousand years from now, this won't be there. Your body is in time, your mind is in time, your thoughts are in time. But the I in which the experience is happening is not in time. So we go back to very fundamental teachings of the wisdom traditions that say the causes of human suffering are 5. Just 5. Human suffering we're talking. Number 1, not knowing who I is. Number 2, grasping and clinging at something that can't be grasped or clung to. How can you grasp to something that is a ceaseless activity? It's like trying to grasp the air, the breeze. So the second cause of suffering is grasping and clinging at something that cannot be clung to. The third cause of suffering is being afraid of impermanence. It's another way of saying the same thing. The fourth cause of suffering is identifying with a false, constricted, habitual self that we call the ego, because we're going to go back to where is I in a moment. And the fifth cause of suffering is the fear of death. Renee, you can show that slide. So in the teachings of the wisdom traditions, Vedanta, where all our meditation practices come from, these are called the 5 kleshas, the 5 causes of human suffering. Klesha is a Sanskrit word that just means human suffering. And then, of course, the teaching is that all those causes of suffering, the 5 causes, are contained in the first cause. Not knowing who I is. Because I is the ultimate reality. And what is I? I is that in which all experience occurs. You might as well write this down. And maybe Renee, you can also write this down for future. So let's say, who is I? Bullet point number 1, I is that in which all experience occurs. Bullet point 2, I is that in which all experience is known. So you know you're having an experience. That's equally important. Number 3, I is that which transforms itself into all experience. So I is that which modifies itself into all experience. And I is that into which all experience subsides, because everything that arises also subsides. Think of it, experience like waves on the ocean. Okay, the waves arise and then you can experience them. I can take a photo of the waves, I can show it to you, and then you can say, oh, let's go look at the waves. By the time we go there, that particular wave has gone. So everything that is of the nature of arising as an experience is also of the nature of subsiding as an experience. Why? Because it's a movement, it's an activity, it's a process. Let's go back to these 4 or 5 bullet points. I is that in which all experience occurs, by experience being mental and physical, perceptual. I is that in which all experience occurs. I is that in which all experience is known. I is that which modifies itself. That's a tough one, but I'll explain it to you. I is that which modifies itself as all experience. And I is that in which all experience subsides. So far, is everyone 100% clear on what I've said? You know, this can't be hopelessly abstract. It has to be understood and that has to be practiced. Otherwise, you're wasting your time, energy, money, everything. Okay, so far we are all on the same page. Okay, now let's examine the nature of experience. Because we've said, I is that in which all experience occurs, right? So all experience can be divided into the following things. Number one, perception. Furthermore, we can divide perception into other things. So, perception of sound, perception of form and color, of shape, so one is perception of sound, second is perception of form, color, shape, which is seeing. When you look at this is a perception of form, color, and shape, right? But it could be also the perception of sound. It could also be the perception of texture, soft. It could be the perception of smell. Smells good. It could be, if I wanted to, the perception of taste. Okay, so all perception is 5 senses. Okay? Sound, form, in form I include shape and color, sound, taste, texture. So experience is perception. What else is experience? Experience is how we interpret that perception. And what is that? That's a thought. The interpretation of a perceptual experience is a thought. And most of that, by the way, is conditioned. It's the hypnosis of what we call social conditioning. I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm not attractive, I'm not rich, or I am, or the opposite. The thought is the interpretation of perception. And then there's another activity that we can call experience. It's feelings or emotions. I like this, I don't like this. This gives me joy, this brings me pain. And then it can also be the experience of imagination. You know, you imagine things either in the future or you examine in your imagination, you experience the past. So what is experience? Let's go back to very basics. It's perception, it's thoughts, it's emotions or feelings, and it's imagination. Now we can add one more thing and then we'll be all set to experience. Experience is also volition or choice. So you have made the choice right now to be here. And that comes from a very strange thing called volition or choice or intention. Raise your arm up, please. See, that was preceded by an intention. So we are choosing every moment of our lives, most of the time automatically, like biological robots. But every choice that we make in every moment of time also determines what we will experience as perception and thought and imagination. So, volition, intention, choice is one more, the same thing, okay? Volition, intention, choice is, I'm making the choice now to walk as I speak to you. I'm also making the choice to speak. So now we have everything that we need to know to define an experience. Everything. What's an experience? It's perceptions, 5 senses, it's thoughts, it's emotions, it's imagination and memory, and it's choice, volition, intention. Who is I? I is that in which all this happens. I is that in which all this happens. We've already said I is that in which all experience occurs, in which all experience is known. I is that which modifies itself as experience, and I is that in which all experience subsides. We've also said all experience is in time, but I is not in time. So now let's go to a little bit deeper and say I is the source of perception. I is the source of thought. I is the source of emotions. I is the source of memory. I is the source of desire or intention. And I is the source of all volition. I've already said that. Okay? So our goal is to not find out necessarily who I is intellectually. Our goal is to find out who I is at the level of true understanding and experience. And that is what the word yoga means. The word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit word yuj. Yuj means union. Actually, it's the same as the English word yoke. So you find this word actually in many scriptural documents, or even in the New Testament when Jesus says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." Because I'm connected with myself. I'm connected with I. This is the purpose of yoga. And there are 4 kinds of yoga that we all practice. One is the yoga that you're practicing here. The yoga, you'll be doing yoga asanas, which is the postures. By the way, the asana word means seat of awareness, seat of I. That's what it means, asana. You'll be doing that. You'll be doing breathing pranayama a little bit. You'll be doing meditation, you'll be doing reflection, the whole experience of meditation as will be taught to you here. You'll be doing techniques for higher consciousness. So this is the first yoga, it's called Raj Yoga, it's called the Royal Yoga, number 1. The second yoga is the yoga that's referred to as Bhakti Yoga, but also called the Yoga of Love. So love in all its expressions, whether it's romantic love or love for your siblings, or love for your parents, or love for other people, love for ideas, love for purpose, love for meaning, love with the environment, or what we call the environment, all that, that's called the yoga of love. The third yoga is the yoga of the intellect, or the yoga of understanding, which is exactly what we're doing right now. And the fourth yoga is the love of action. The love of action, which means that your actions come from your true self, your I, not your ego self. And when you have a combination of these 4 yogas, the royal yoga, the yoga of love, the yoga of the intellect, and the yoga of action, then in a sense, you can achieve whatever you want. And in doing so, you can also find purpose in life and lose the fear of death, because you actually have discovered your true self. Okay, so in the remaining 10 minutes now, let's go into who is I, even though we've defined it, okay? So when I say, where are you? You say, I'm here, meaning somewhere here. Where is Deepak? He's on the stage. Of course, for me, I'm somewhere here, and you are somewhere there. The fact is, we cannot biologically explain that the I is somewhere in the body, because we can't find it. You know, if I go inside your body, look with a CAT scan in your brain or an MRI, there's no little person sitting there saying, I'm Roger Gabriel. Okay, so there's no I to be found in the brain or in the body. And the reason is very clear. Your body is an experience in I. You are not in your body. Your body is in you. And furthermore, it's an activity in you. It's not a thing. Similarly, you are not in the mind. The mind is in you. The mind is an activity in your body. Similarly, you're not in the world or the universe is in you. You, I, is in which body, mind, and the universe are a unified activity. They are one activity. They're not different activities. Your body, your mind, and the universe are not different activities. And all of them are simply the following: perceptions, sense perceptions, thoughts, emotions, and choices. Let me take this one step further for today. This is very good. Just project this. Nicely done. So this is all experience. Okay, and show the other slide too, the yogas. This, okay, that everyone's taking notes, but this is for the future as well, in case I forget. Okay. Let's go one step further. This is all experience, right? So now, let's do the following. Remember, I and awareness and consciousness and soul and spirit is all the same right now, okay? For now. So right this moment, as you're listening to me, just be aware of that which is listening. And the stillness that you experience is I. It's not a thought which might be saying, what am I going to get for lunch? Or I should have gone to the bathroom before the lecture. Or what the heck is he talking about? Why didn't my girlfriend return my call? So many things occurring in the same I. So just from this you should realize I is present when you're having a particular experience, and I is present when that particular experience is not happening and another experience is happening. So I is always present. Therefore, it's not in time. Okay, the experience is arising and subsiding in every moment of time. The experience of that which we call the mind, that which we call the body, that which we call the universe. So I'll come back to this in a moment. Meanwhile, in order to complete this, let me ask you a question. What is this? That which I'm pointing to.
Well, I know the answer, but you think it's your shoe because that's the name we've given.
Okay, good. She's very advanced. She says, we think it's a shoe, but that's the name we've given to it. Excellent. Okay? So we call it a shoe. Everybody in this room would call it a shoe, right? In fact, the whole world would call it a shoe. What would you call this? Right? In fact, the whole world would call it a hand. What would you call this? A body. The whole world would call it a body. What would we call this space we're in? A room. The whole world would call it the room. And when we go outside tonight, we look at the stars and the galaxies and the Milky Way, the whole world would call that the universe. Agreed? But it's not so. If I threw this shoe at a baby, okay, and said, you know, we do this with babies all the time, with toys, what would the baby do? It would touch it. It would experience colors and shapes and forms. It wouldn't have a name for it, but it would experience some forms. It might touch it to see if it's pleasant. It would definitely taste it and smell it and even try to eat it. Till you say, stop it, that's a shoe. Okay? So the shoe is what we call a human construct around experience. No other animal would call this a shoe, a giraffe or a snake or whatever. It's a totally human construct. But in the same way, that which you call your hand and your body is a human construct. Because what do you look at when have you seen babies play with their hands and their thumbs? They suck it, they smell it, they taste it, they put it in their mouth, they even try to eat it, they chew it. Because all they're experiencing is, put that slide back, the slide you have right now. All is the baby experiences that. But now, you come along and you say, hey, your name is Deepak, you're Indian, this is your hand, that's your body, and that's a shoe. And when we go outside, those are stars and galaxies. So, to go back to what you said, anything that you can give a name to, or anything that you can describe as a human being, is a construct. We created it. Now, on Wednesday or Thursday, I'm going to do a lecture on You Are the Universe and why I actually mean that. Okay? Because all we experience is this. The rest we make up. We make up the idea that I have a body. Well, which one? If your body is in activity, and that activity is happening just like this, then which body are you? We make up the idea, I have a mind. But if your mind is thoughts and feelings and imagination, which one? Today's, yesterday's, this morning's, when you were a baby? And we make up the idea that there's a universe. All we are experiencing is this. And where are we experiencing this? In our self, in our being. That's why it's important to know, who am I? Now, are these constructs useful? Of course they are useful, but they're also, they can be divine, these constructs. That's why we are, we have the knowledge of good and evil, as they say in the biblical and other texts. So this knowledge of creating constructs can be very useful. We created technology, we created internet, we created email, we created cameras, we can go to Mars, but Mars is a name we gave to an experience, right? We can land people on the moon. You say, well, if all this is a construct, then how can we land on the moon? Well, your body, the spaceship and the moon are all constructs that we agreed to and we collectively gave names to, whether it's bosons or electrons or neutrons or atoms or particles. These are human constructs for modes of knowing and experience for this. Are they useful? Yes. We created what is called civilization. We created cathedrals and art and music and paintings. We created institutions, we created money, we created commerce, we created kingdoms, but we created also havoc. We created atom bombs and nuclear weapons. We created mechanized ways of killing people. We created extinction of species. We created social injustice. We created economic injustice. We created war. We created terrorism. We created possibly the next extinction for humanity. Because we were not asking ourselves the question, who am I? In which all this is happening. Who you are is enormously powerful. Because you are creating reality every moment through this experience. But if we aren't in touch with who we are, then we get on to all those problems, including the problem of birth and death. Because who dies? What dies? Well, there is nobody. What dies is that program of perceptions, thoughts, feelings, imagination, choices. Like watching a movie on the screen and the program is over, but the screen is still there. Right? So that's a good way to think about it. I am not subject to birth and death. Birth and death happens to experience, and it's happening right now. A thought is arising, it's being born, it's dying right now. A perception is arising right now, and it's dying right now. So actually, birth and death are the continuum of life. Life is not the opposite of death. Life is the continuum of experience which is born and dies in every moment of perceived time in a timeless now. This week is about those 4 questions. Who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? What am I grateful for? But we'll end with one more simple exercise. Something that I've learned from other non-dual teachers, and then I'll end with 4 principles. And then if you want, you can go home and do your whatever you do. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you aware? Because you are. And you can all say yes. Once again, are you aware? Yes. Now I'm going to ask you the same question. But don't answer it till I raise my hand, and then everyone says yes. Agreed? Are you aware? So are you aware is a thought? Yes is a thought. In between is you. You're present in the thought, this thought, you're present in the next thought, and you're present in between thought. You are always there. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the same question, are you aware? And this time, just don't answer it, just become aware. Go slip into that space that you were in right now. Are you aware? So it's that simple. To be aware is to find yourself. Because awareness is the eye in which all experience is happening. Experience of mind, what we call mind. Mind is another concept. Body is another concept. Universe is another concept. Shoe is another concept. And they're all the same thing, actually. They are modifications of your own self. Why? Let's go back to this slide. Sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell are modified forms of awareness. It's how awareness knows that an experience is happening. Thoughts. Thought is a modified form of awareness. It's a movement in awareness. Emotions, a modified form of awareness. Imagination, choice, intention. This is you. Okay, so by knowing who am I, is known all this. Now we can expand on this, and we will, and there'll be other things, and you'll be learning meditation, and the meditation will be expanded, but I think you got it, right? While the rest of the world is stuck in traffic jams and getting pissed off. Okay, thank you very much.